Hello everyone,
Great start.
welcome to my channel. Today we have a special guest called Collin Miller, and we're going to be mostly focusing on the fact that he is a co-founder on a startup at the bright age of like 25?
26.
26. Okay. So do you want to do a short introduction of yourself, like where you're from, what's your startup, or like what you're even interested in doing at the time?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Collin Miller. I graduated from Cal State Northridge with a bachelor degree in computer science. Worked in the aerospace industry, and then got together with a couple of friends from college, and we started a business in artificial intelligence.
Cool. Is there like a particular reason why you guys started it?
Yeah, exactly. The reason why we started was because we had a really good team.
Nice.
we had a project in school, and we worked with a couple of different people, and we just knew it was a golden squad. So we just decided that it was a good idea to start a business.
Okay. So you guys started first with the team and then the idea, not necessarily the idea.
Yes.
That you gathered a team.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. So did you guys know you wanted to do a startup, or just someone within the team were like, you know what, let's just do this, and then you had your full-time job as well, and then once you thought it was a good idea, you decided to jump ship?
So we had known that we worked really well, and one person who's actually the lead on the school project knew that he was going to go into entrepreneurship. That's our current CEO. And so he basically extended some offers like, hey guys, would you like to start a business? And we said yeah, because we all enjoyed working with each other, and we knew that we're the type of team that gets it done.
Yeah. Did you know that you wanted to start a startup?
I would say that I've had some ideas to do it, but it wasn't like my first idea coming out of college.
Cool. So I have this icebreaker that I want to ask in every single video, just to make sure that we have like a baseline. If you had all the time in the world, what would you be doing?
Honestly, I'd be spending a lot of time discovering and exploring like all the different things that life has to offer, like really developing different hobbies that I'm interested in. And is this like all the time in the world, like I'm not going to die type of time, or is this 36 hours in a day type of time?
You don't have to die, something like that.
Yeah, no, I would definitely get really good at a lot of different hobbies, because I enjoy learning a lot of different things and then putting them together.
What are your aspirations in life?
Well,
so broad.
So my aspiration in life is to provoke genuine productive emotions in others through building and entertaining. That's my MO.
What do you define as a productive emotion?
So the reason why those words are so specific is that positive emotions aren't necessarily productive, and negative emotions sometimes can be productive.
I see.
So it's a genuine productive emotion that helps at the end of the day.
Can you give us an example of what that means?
For example, if you're really angry, that's seen as a negative emotion, but for a lot of people it really spurs them forward and lets them succeed and finish a lot more than they could if they weren't angry.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of someone say this before.
Yeah, well, I mean, it happened to me in college. I got really mad that I didn't do as well as I wanted to on a test, and then that made me get 100% on the next one.
So it's really like trying to find someone's motivation and then just trying to kind of go with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Which I think is a pretty good entrepreneurial trait to try and provoke those positive and genuine emotions.
You had an associate's degree in metal welding. How did that actually translate? What made you go into that, and what made you even go into computer science after that? That's a really interesting educational career path. Yeah,
so I'm a craftsman by nature, so I enjoy building, but I also have another side which is entertaining, which is through building and entertaining. Yeah. And so honestly, welding was an outlet for me to create and build, and it looks really cool also. And so I went into it. The college that I went to as a community college had a really good welding program. And I had heard that was a profession that did make a fair amount of money. So I went into it and I ended up really enjoying it. When I first started, the first few classes, I was in the top 3 of the class with the progress of the welding, because basically you would take the metal up to the teacher and they would say, yes, this is good, or no, this isn't good.
Wow.
So I was just banging them out really fast. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. But the reason why I decided to switch was just because of really health reasons. There is a lot of safety precautions in welding, but it can still go wrong. Like for one story, someone was breathing in gas which they shouldn't have, and their job was threatening to fire them if they didn't just do the job right now. And so he did the job without the mask on, and they ended up becoming paralyzed.
Oh, wow.
He won a lawsuit and he's a lot of money now, but I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, because he's paralyzed.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow, I never heard about this before.
Yeah, no, that's why I got out of metalworking. It's a really great profession. It's just I preferred to go down a different path.
So what made you decide to go into computer science afterwards, out of everything else that there is?
Well, I took that same craftsman vibe, and I was kind of looking for the next route and the next street. And then I took a intro class to computer science. And the first project, when it was assigned, I finished it the same night that it was due. And then I came back and I asked the teacher for the second project the next day.
A prodigy here.
Well, I just loved it that much because I just went home and I just completely finished it. And then I was like, can I do the next project? Because I'm like kind of bored and I want more. And he let me get it. And so I finished that one in I think about 2 days. And then by the third time he said, you kind of need to wait. There's the rest of the semester that you still need to finish. But I definitely fell in love with it originally, just because, something as simple as making a vending machine, which has no intrinsic value to anyone now or at that time, but just building something like that and seeing it work was kind of magical for me. So that's why I proceeded.
So did you see what you wanted to do in tech at that time, or you were just like, I'm just gonna do this, try this out and see what goes?
Really, it was just an exploratory class.
Okay.
So there was no immediate goal of, I want to do this, where should I start? Oh, computer science. It was, let me dip my toe into computer science. This is really fun and really fulfilling. So then I found what I wanted to do after a few months of computer science work.
And then after graduation, you went into the aerospace industry. What exactly, did you want to go into that field, or was it just an opportunity that came up?
It was a really good opportunity because in college I knew some different people, one of which worked at that company, and there was a job fair, and I met them at the job fair, and I was passing my resume around, and they took my resume and made sure it got to the right people.
What did you like about the field?
Of aerospace?
Yeah.
Definitely the robotics aspects of it. Yeah.
Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, I was a computer vision engineer for UAVs. So part of my job consisted of, moving cameras, establishing routes, detection, tracking of different objects and such.
Did you think it was hard to transition from computer science into that? Because it's probably more first theory and now it's actually applying it. Or did you think you had all the tools that you had to do that?
I would say going into it, I had all the tools that I needed because I had the computer vision training from school that really helped me nail the internship over the summer.
Cool. So do you have any suggestions or advice for anyone that's interested in computer science or even the aerospace industry at the time?
Definitely is, if you're in college, do projects outside of classes because they aren't going to give you the experience that you really need. I basically think that my value in the workplace came from doing extracurriculars and doing really impressive projects outside of classes that kind of made people stop when they look at my resume. Yeah.
So going back into the startup itself, what is exactly the story behind the entire startup, of like how it was formed? I know, like you mentioned that the co-founder or like the main founder, I think, reached out to you guys as a team, and then it was like, okay, so what happened after that? Did you guys go in a room, figure out an idea, or was that coming from one person, or maybe like bounce back ideas? Like, what is the origin story behind it?
So at first, we were a team working on the project for the Air Force for search and rescue. So we were designing experiments for human-in-the-loop search and rescue robotics. So that means that given a building on fire, you send in the robots and you have a human operator, and we measure the cognitive stress of that human operator and change the transparency and the adaptiveness of the system as an experiment with a control group and such. We were the software engineering team on it, and so we were working at the lab at CSUN, and we definitely had something during that whole project. And then afterwards, the current CEO, as I mentioned, came up and was saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting a business. Are you guys interested?" And I said yes, because honestly, I enjoyed everyone that I was working with. And then also, I just knew that team had like this vibe that I knew was going to work.
So what made you decide to finally pull the plug on your full-time job and leave for full-time on your startup?
The first couple of investments and contracts definitely helped. We weren't going to leave our jobs until we started getting some money coming in. Yeah.
So how did you guys get investors in the first place?
Well, it's definitely in the networks. I can't go into too many specifics.
Yeah.
As far as investors go, it's just reaching out to the right people and having the right conversations.
Okay, so when it came to the startup, like how did you know what to do? Because I'm pretty sure you guys are probably all coming from technical backgrounds. How did you guys bring in the business background?
So the business side of it, we definitely did have a strong technical side. And the business side at first is, if you have a really good team, it's going to be more difficult to understand your product as opposed to the other side where you have a really good product and really good business side, and you need to find a good technical team to do it. So realistically, in the beginning, it just consisted of different pivots to making sure is the technology that we have not developed enough? Is this going to be the right application? And then just trial and error from there.
So what were some things that you guys learned, or like any problems you had, complications, hardships?
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely hardships. I mean, it's a startup. There's going to be hardships, but I would say some of the main hardships consisted around, as strange as it sounds, working together, but not like personal problems, but more of like a technical working together.
Yeah. Like dependencies?
Yeah, exactly. And then I would say it's really difficult to kind of work and start a company as well.
Of course.
So those were the problems, I would say.
So how did you go about that? Like, did you have advisors, or did you guys just kind of do trial and error like you mentioned before?
We did trial and error and tripped on a couple of wires on the way.
So can you go a little bit more in detail in terms of like, how did you guys work together as a team? Because you guys probably all came from full-time jobs and then also had to do this on the side and still work with many different personalities and also get investors. There's like so much on your plate out there.
Yeah, I would say that we do work together pretty well. And the times that we have some resistance on each other when it comes to like making decisions and such, I think that we definitely all are level-headed enough to not let things get out of control. So definitely having like mature founders is really important. And I think that that's why a lot of people don't think that younger people should start companies, because usually youth is connected to unjustified outbursts and emotions that aren't tamed correctly.
Right.
But there are people of every age that are both really mature and really immature. Like there would be some 50-year-olds that may not be super mature and some 20-year-olds that might be super mature. So working together, it's just keeping level-headed and staying on the same page and not getting too crazy.
So in terms of the team, I know you guys also hired employees. When did you guys think it was the time to hire?
It was definitely the time to hire when our bandwidth was definitely getting in the way. Because every team has a certain bandwidth and a certain velocity that they can have when it comes to like development speed. And as you get more projects and more contracts, that means that that bandwidth is going to get stretched and stretched and stretched. And it's definitely not a good thing to, for a long period of time, overwhelm people with a gigantic workload. So we just needed some stress relief. And so we decided to hire.
So when you said that there's like the more contracts there are, the bigger the bandwidth that you would need, how did you get those contracts to begin with? Was that through networking or maybe even through like the investors and maybe who they knew?
Yeah, it's a mixture of networking and reaching out, connecting with your friends, knowing who to talk to, and asking the right questions.
So what have you learned throughout your entire journey so far? And this doesn't even have to be about the startup. It could just be about like from all the way from college or even your associate's degree in metal welding, and then all the way up to now.
Consistency, and the correct emotions at the correct time.
Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So with going back to the whole productive emotions, is sometimes being angry can be a really good thing. I've written some of the best code in my life when I'm angry. And I think that being compassionate and understanding in the right situations is really important. But then again, being skeptical in the right situations is important to make sure that people obviously don't take advantage of you.
Yeah.
So definitely emotional intelligence, as HR as it sounds, is a really important thing in the workplace.
So how did you practice emotional intelligence? Like, I know a lot of people may not be as emotional intelligent. How would they be able to improve that side of themselves?
I mean, the first step is obviously reading some books on it. There are books on emotional intelligence that I've read, but a lot of it, and the biggest chunk of it, is going to be the trial and error piece. Naturally, I'm more on that side of understanding towards people. So I like to be the person in the argument that's calming down two sides. So I don't necessarily have a problem of riling things up or being too passive.
Did you ever have that issue when it came to the workplace?
Which issue?
Like if you had trial and error, you weren't entirely sure what was going to happen if you said something or said it in a certain way, then it maybe blew back. And like, did you have any situations like that at work?
None that I can remember now.
Lucky. What were some sacrifices you had to make for your startup?
Time, sleep, and relationships. 100%. So time, obviously, you have a lot less time for all of the other important things of your life. Sleep, obviously, because it's because of time, but it's also because of stress as well. If you have a crushing deadline, you'll need to stay up later. And then relationships, it just all comes down to that time aspect of you're just not going to have as much time as you would normally have for your friends or your family, your mom, your dad, your dog, which working from home allows you to pet your dog. So that's another benefit for working at home.
Do you have any time management skills or advice for people?
I would say blocking out your day is important, but giving yourself some slide time, which is the time for things to slip and some error in your schedule, that's really important too. Is because I've gone on two ends of the spectrum. I've gone completely 100% by the minute. I have to do this at this time, but I've also just let myself do whatever I feel like doing. And obviously it's correct to have some kind of balance. So that balance for me is just getting a general picture of what the day is going to be like. But then as the day goes on, the granularity of the day starts to fill in.
Okay.
Yep.
Now that you're in a startup, and you did mention that you may want to start like other business ideas as well, are you thinking of any startups at this time? Like maybe on the side or maybe even a completely different one?
No, right now it's completely focused on the current task at hand.
So would you want to maybe build on the current ideas of the startup for your ideas or go to eventually a new venture?
Well, right now, I think it's just really important to make sure that this piece is finished correctly. And I think that given enough time and certain situations, I could say one thing now, but it's completely different later. So it's more of reading the situation and knowing when may be a good time to start something else, or if it's just better to stay. So what is your end goal for the startup? Is it to just build a really great product and service, or is it to get it sold? And
get a great payout?
Well, the main goal for the business is definitely the customers, and the customer development, and making sure that customers are happy. Depending on what offers come along down the line, selling the company is definitely an issue, not an issue, an option. But given the right circumstances, some companies have decided not to get bought out. So it really depends on where the business is at. So that's the thing about startups, is they're just kind of blurry, and you know what you need to do 5 minutes before you need to do it.
That's why I hate startups, because I can't handle that. Not that I hate them, I just would not be in them. So what do you see as the future of tech?
I see the future of tech definitely being VR, quantum computers, and AI.
So now that like your startup is in the AI field, what do you want to do in AI? Like what specifically are you doing at this time? I don't even think I've asked this question before.
Well, my personal interests with AI are unfortunately not as monetizable.
Okay.
Where I am interested in the emotional side of AI and how it can act human. That's not necessarily as monetizable as using AI in marketing or advertising. Definitely in terms of artificial intelligence, I'm interested in making things look and feel human.
Okay, and what would those things be?
For example, if at Disneyland there's a robotic agent walking around the park, it would definitely have to feel extremely natural, extremely comfortable, and people could not be scared of it. And it would have to be completely safe. But having a Disney character walk around instead of being on the rides on the side, in my opinion, be that golden project for me, where I get to basically just create a human, which is why I got into AI in the first place.
So would you have ever imagined yourself in Disney as an Imagineer?
I can imagine it.
So outside of your job at the startup, or like, I mean, co-founding it too, do you have anything that you're doing outside of it, if you even have the time to do it?
No, it's purely, starting a business is not something that you can do side hustles on. And if you do, then you're going to actively be taking away from the business at hand. And I think one driving factor in which I don't is because of, if for some reason we don't execute a contract or something doesn't get done, and I had been working on something on the side, that level of guilt on thinking, what if I had put in the extra 10 hours that 1 week instead of doing the side hustle? So that's why I focus really hard on the startup end.
So you would suggest for everyone out there that wants to start their own startup they have to be in 100%, or maybe even 150%.
I mean, it depends. I've seen a lot of people do startups as a side hustle and keep it as a side hustle. The payoff is correlated with the amount of time,
right?
And the success of the business is correlated with the amount of time. And one thing that I don't think I've ever stopped hearing in the workplace is focus. Definitely need focus. So being scattered on 5 different fronts is detrimental to what you're currently focusing on. So it's just important to keep that focus.
So that leads me to the next question, which is, when did you know you were working smart and not working hard? Because I feel like that's a fine line when it comes to startups.
Yeah, and I've been on both sides of the spectrum, where I've been working too hard, but I've been working a little too smart and ended up just not working enough. Which, again, it's important to find that gray zone and that balance that works for you. So I think that working too hard and killing yourself over something, you'll see and you'll know when your productivity is having negative consequences. If you've gotten 4 hours of sleep for the past 2 months, then you're not someone who can do that. You're definitely going to have some problems. If you're working too hard, it's just not going to be productive. But then on the other side of things, if you're just trying to be too smart with things, it's easy to perceive that as being lazy. And then also, people don't like being taken advantage of. So if you're trying to work smart by having other people do it, it's not necessarily working smart, it's just getting other people to do it for you. So it's like a fine balance of just working hard smartly.
Working hard and working smart.
Yeah.
So, and you can stop me if this is not even a good question to ask. How can we find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Collin Miller.
Okay, and his link will be down below. If there was someone out there that wants a job at your startup, what can they do?
They can reach out to me, and we have applications and job postings on LinkedIn. And if they feel that they match, they can either shoot me a message or apply online.
And what's the name of your startup? I don't even think I've asked you this.
It's nFlux.ai.
How can people support your startup?
Just reaching out. Startups are wild beasts, so depending on the state of the startup, different things are needed.
What have you been up to lately?
So recently I've actually been taking some time off, and I'm just getting back into the job and getting ready to finish off the year strong.
Okay, those are all my questions, but when it comes to anyone interested in computer science, artificial intelligence, or startups, do you have any advice for our viewers?
Yeah, I would say that if you're interested in getting into artificial intelligence or computer science at all, if you look at some of the online certifications like Google Cloud Engineers, AWS, and Microsoft, they have different specializations for you. And if you do get those certifications or specializations, I highly suggest getting them while you're working on a project at the same time. So for example, if you want to become a web engineer or a full stack engineer, you could get a certificate, but at the same time, just be building out a website. It doesn't need to be anything revolutionary, but just something that you can showcase to others that will at least impress them.
Right, sounds great. So I see we have an audience question, and for those who don't know, we actually have Michelle Lam and Addison Chen here.
Hello.
Michelle, you have a question?
Yes, I have a question regarding how does your team deal with the turbulence of COVID and that impacting your investors and your mental health and your team's decisions to do certain changes within how you work during this time?
That's a great question.
Yeah, so COVID definitely had an effect. Some places negative, but some places positive, depending on how you look at it. So as far as working, there's pros and cons to working from home, obviously. So working from home, you don't have to spend 2 hours in traffic, which I prefer. I definitely prefer that, not going down the 5 freeway or the 405. People know what I'm talking about. But I will say that there is an intrinsic value of being with the people that you work with and having like a face-to-face like this.
Yeah.
Like having a Zoom interview would be much different than right now. And then as far as the business and investing side goes, it definitely affects investments. But some of the higher rated and better companies were founded during recessions. So it's essentially finding alternative routes.
So were there, I mean, this could be a little bit more on the confidential side, but like, were there times when maybe an investor was close to pulling out, but then like, what did you do to try to keep them back in? Was there some kind of discussion you have to have, or maybe some strategies you may have to change some of your business model?
Yeah, well, I mean, investors react differently to different situations. So forcing things is never a good idea.
Yeah.
So it's always just finding that happy interim of what both parties want, and then putting that together to make sure that everyone is still happy without completely selling everything out that you own. So it's just that happy triangle to keep.
So with COVID-19, how did you, and I know like Michelle asked this question before too, is like, how did you deal with your mental health as well?
My mental health was pretty unscathed during COVID, just because 2 hours of traffic time a day gives you a lot more time to do different things, like catch up on your life, catch up on planning your days, cooking, etc. So I don't feel like that was too much of a problem for me.
So I have a question. So what are your expectations and goals for the company for like achievements like for next year? Like what are you expecting for the startup to be reaching to? Down the line, are you expecting the company to be expanding in the next few years? Or what are your expectations?
So the expectations for that are going to be hitting the break-even point within the next couple months to a year, and then down the line achieving higher and higher scale with profitability and maintaining that profitability.
Any comments?
Great job, sweetie.
For those who don't know, this is Collin's girlfriend, and also we have a video interview on her. Link over here.
Check it out.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of this video, and thank you for being our special guest.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure.
But yeah, thank you so much, and make sure to check all his links down below, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye! Aww, look at Moonpie being a badass. Look at her, she's a log.
She's like, I'm so full and bored.
So cute.